Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
Now, here's your host, Ed Cohen.
This is Ed in San Diego, and you're on Global TV Talk Show, and our very special guest is our old friend, Ken SOMERS in New England. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you, Ed. It's always a pleasure to be here. I hope the weather in San Diego is much nicer than the murky, wet yuck we have here today.
Let me tell you that we have had mucky, damp weather here for like a month, all right? But the Santa Ana has happened.
Okay.
That cold front, actually the jet stream was dipping down. It usually goes north of us. And so San Diego is always getting this great weather, right? And then the jet stream was down. And so we brought all the Seattle weather, all right? But now it's going to be 80 degrees today. And then tomorrow through the weekend, it's going to hit 90, which is a little bit too hot.
You're killing me. You're killing me.
Well, it's going to be opening day for the Red Sox in the rain, right?
Well, they actually postponed it by a day.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. But I will tell you, and I know it has nothing to do with our topic today, for the first time in my life, I finally got down to Florida for a couple of Grapefruit League games. And it was a lot nicer in Florida than it was in New England.
Yeah, you know, that's why so many people move there. Boy. Once they're there, they got other issues to deal with.
Well, yeah, I was going to say,
but it's a nice weather.
Yeah, the weather is fabulous. Yeah. There are other dimensions of living and working in Florida that is probably best left unsaid.
Yeah, I know. It's a different world. So let's talk about your view. I want to ask you a couple of things. And if you don't want to talk about something, just redirect me. But
I will.
So you have a lot of executive experience working in Eastern Europe and Poland in particular. And I'm sure you had some contact with people who live in Ukraine, as well as other places across that region. So I want to ask you, number one, how you think about all the crap that's going on over there and the tragedy, number one. Number two, how that is impacting business people you know in Warsaw and Gdansk and in wherever in Poland, which has become over the years a very legitimate international working center, and a back office, if you will, a regional place for Global 500. So no question about that. And now everybody has been impacted, and it's right next door. Yeah. And literally, if Putin isn't taken care of somehow by NATO or by whoever, maybe the man upstairs will do it for us. Who knows? But it certainly is a world tragic event going on, and Hitler was really bad, and this is bringing it all home again, but on a bigger scale, potentially. And Poland will be next, if not the Baltics. Or Romania is right there. And so it's pretty alarming when I think of the international business contacts that I've been able to bring on our talk show over the past 2 years, several from Eastern Europe. I never would have thought any of this could happen. And then let's take the next topic and about the turmoil in the US, okay? Not political here, it's all business, about back to work, okay, how much? Hybrid, the bosses have to be changed now. They have to have a more collaborative attitude, just like we've talked with Stephen Howard in the past about this. So if we could focus on, is it an escape? People are escaping a job they don't like or a boss they hate? Or is it just plain old, I've got to get something else to do?
Sure. So lots to unpack there. Let's see how good my memory is. I think, the first question was my own personal reactions to what's going on in Ukraine.
Based on your work experience as an executive in Poland.
Absolutely. So I will tell you that I have been in regular contact with my many friends and colleagues in Poland, almost from the very beginning of the invasion. And the response, at least from my circle of friends, is universal horror. People are just, there really are no longer any words to adequately describe both how I react and how my friends and colleagues in Poland react. To a single person. And I have a fair network in Poland that goes from Wrocław, which is in the southeast, to Warsaw, to a couple of other cities. Every single one of them, believe it or not, has taken in one or more refugees in their own homes. They've donated to appropriate charities. In fact, early in the conflict, I reached out to a very dear friend and said, I want to help. I can't be there, but I'm hesitant to give to one of the international charities. Can you hook me up? And in a matter of minutes, I was making a donation to a charity in Poland that is focused strictly on taking care of refugee orphans, which is, a niche of people that I hadn't thought about. But once you do, you say, oh my God, what about these poor children? So people, I just can't say strongly enough how honored I feel to have a connection to so many of these people and the nobility and humanity of their actions to support their neighbors in the Ukraine. It's just, it's humbling to see how generous human beings can be when the chips are down. So, and I feel very fortunate to have those affiliations. From a business point of view, I think that everyone's still in Poland. I think they're all still trying to figure it out. I know that there's new legislation in the Polish, their version of a parliament, looking at new flexibilities with remote work, both from managing the pandemic perspective, but also now this influx of literally 2 million refugees into the Polish nation. So there's a lot going on from a legal point of view on how businesses are expected to behave and accommodate. But I think, and again, I'm interpreting from afar. So anyone in Poland who sees this and says I got it wrong, I apologize in advance. But my impression is that both on a national legislative level, as well as on an individual human level and business level, everyone's trying to figure out, how do we make this work? How do we help our neighbors, but also keep our business running? And people are writing the playbook as it's happening.
Yeah. So being in the HR business, the people business, and of others, I can't even think of how to say this better than just showing you that I'm stumbling over, because it's so tragic. And yet there's red lights flashing about what's coming next. Next could be May 1, or it could be even sooner.
Well, yeah, and next could manifest in different ways. I mean, the popular opinion seems to be that that Russian person, I don't even want to use his name. I grew up, I'm going to betray some of my heritage. Certain names you would say, you would spit on the ground after you say them. But so I'm not even going to say the name because I'm not going to spit in my own house. But hope it seems that he's gearing up to really focus on taking over the Donbass region. The criminal acts that are being uncovered now are just horrific by any standard. But beyond Ukraine, I worry about the Baltics next. And although I certainly don't want American blood to be spilled in anywhere anywhere on the planet, including at home. I do applaud the administration's decisions to partner with NATO to strengthen our military presence in the Baltic states and in Poland. I know my friends in Poland, they have mixed reactions. You know, they welcome the support and the demonstration, the physical demonstration of support that NATO and the United States is providing by deploying more troops and more equipment. But by the same token, you know, this is a country that has a history of invasion. And you know, nobody likes to have foreign troops on their soil. So it's got to be very, very conflicting for the people in the region. You know, on the one hand, they welcome the protection that those deployments represent. On the other hand, it's foreign troops on their soil. And I want to believe that our military and our diplomats are sophisticated enough to be able to thread that needle. At least I hope they are.
And to be in defense of the fake news.
Well, yeah, that's a whole nother story.
That KBG has been the expert on forever. And you know, going back to the old James Bond movies, early days.
Yeah. And you know, in fairness, you have to give credit where credit is due. Their intelligence operation, their demonstrated ability to disrupt facts in the Western world, it's a very powerful weapon that we need to learn how to deal with. And we're behind the curve. At least my perception is we're behind.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. So let's talk about, and we can come back to this later or another day, but because there's a lot to go into from an HR management, HR coaching role with the number of refugees scattered across Europe, in particular in Poland. It seems like there would be a heck of a business opportunity, what with all the Ukrainians who, they're not poor people, they're all educated, can put them to work doing something. And they can open their own shops as well, or enough to service this new population of customers under the umbrella of the Polish companies, perhaps. You know, set up new companies to service the needs somehow. Apparently, there's going to be significant funding, not only from the U.S. but from EU, and eventually reparations from Moscow once the World Court gets done with all that. But U.S. is going to have to fund it up front, and I don't know how they're going to pay for it. Probably higher taxes here, but
they don't typically go down.
Yeah, right.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
And by airs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at airs.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
Stop dreaming and start living overseas. International lifestyle consultant Emily Braun can help you seamlessly transition to your new life in your dream destination. Whether you are a retiree, a digital nomad, or a mobile executive, Emily Braun can make your transition overseas a success. Visit emilybraun.com.
Coutalis is a global group with a worldwide footprint. With 16 agencies in 10 countries, Coutalis offers companies and mobile professionals a unique combination of HR services and options. Find us at coutalis.com.
Take your communication skills to the next level. Barbara Bolt of Bolt Global has a passion to make you shine. As our globe expands, effective intercultural communication and presentation is a must. Visit boltglobal.com.
Okay, so let's talk about what's going on in the US right now. Back to work. Just as an aside, here in San Diego, downtown San Diego, or Seaport Village, right out here. And this is Convention City in normal times. And so this past May, things really opened up and the hotels started filling. But the number of conventions were just minimum until now. And let me tell you, this city has exploded. There's, I don't know how many, but the population downtown and the traffic is like double, triple than it has been for 2 years, which, you know, it has its issues, but it's really good to see all the hotels and restaurants filled.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's pretty exciting. So how are companies managing the people?
Well, I don't think there's any single answer. And anyone who tells you that there's one answer probably doesn't really know what they're talking about, with all respect to those who think they have the answer. But you know what I'm observing, let me put it like that, and this is purely anecdotal. When I talk to my clients and I talk to others in the field, hybrid seems to be the model that is happening, and hybrid seems to be the model that will prevail. Now, hybrid is going to mean a different thing for almost every different company. You know, whether it's the number of days you're physically in the office versus at home, whether it's, you know, I was talking to someone earlier today, they're on a schedule I hadn't heard of before. 9 days in the office, 9-hour days, and every other Friday off, which is new in the post, well, I hope we can call it the post-COVID world. So there's lots of creative solutions being experimented with. All the academics are following this to try to figure out what's the right answer, what's the answer. And again, I'll assert there will be no one answer, but people are going back to work in the office, and it's creating other unanticipated problems. You know, one example that comes immediately to mind is if you have a hybrid arrangement and you have some of the people in the office and others who are still working remotely, and you need to have a team meeting, there are a lot of people who have now gone into the office, whether it's in New York City or downtown Groton, Connecticut, or San Diego, and they're sitting in the office on a Zoom call with people who are at home. And they're scratching their heads and saying, why aren't I at home on a Zoom call?
Right.
So
some of the writings that I've read this past week is that managers have to be more collaborative. Of course, you knew that anyway, but that the office place has been or is going to be redesigned so that it's a social happening, whereas for 2 years there was no socialism, no socializing going on in the company, and that builds team, that builds spirit, and conversations. But it's not really a place to do work anymore. It's a place for meeting and collaboration and the personal side. I'm losing my words here, but socializing. No, and then going home to the desktop and putting work together, and then sending it out, and then going back in the office, and that kind of a routine is too simple, isn't it?
No. Well, but again, in a relatively small number of words, there's a lot to unpack there. So one of my good friends is actually, she's an architect by training, but she spent a career on designing workspaces. And she's now an industrial psychologist in addition to being an architect. Very interesting woman. You should meet her sometime. And she tells me that companies are completely rethinking how to use their space. Collaboration and collaboration spaces is a big thrust. But I will tell you that the new office environment, and again, every company will be different, every company will do their own thing, but generally, it will be collaboration spaces, but companies are still going to expect work to get done in the office. I think the thing that you touched on that gives me more anxiety than what the physical office is going to look like is, you made a comment that you come in, you have a collaboration meeting, you do your thing, then you go home and log on, and that's what's happening. That's what people are working more hours, and Americans already were the longest working people on the planet. There was an article I read this morning. I want to say it was in the MIT press, but I'm not certain. But I beg your pardon, it was a Microsoft study. And if I remember the data correctly, between 2020 and 2021, the average remote worker was working 13% more hours per day than they were before the pandemic. So the notion of work-life balance is a jumble right now. And I'm gonna mess up the quote, but I'm reminded of something that Jack Welch said, and that was along the lines of, there is no work-life balance. There are work-life decisions, and those work-life decisions have consequences. And I'm paraphrasing, that's not an exact quote, but I think we have to start thinking about it that way, because the notion of work-life balance is, I hate to say it, I just don't think it's real. I think that Welch had it right. There are work-life decisions. And to go back to connect this to one of the things you said at the outset about the Great Resignation, you can call it whatever you want, call it the Great Resignation, call it the Great Fleeing, whatever. But the seeds of that were planted long before the pandemic. Which is why your comment about collaboration and the discussions you and I have had in the past with Stephen Howard about a more human approach to leading people is critical to business success going forward. The old command and control, militaristic leadership style is not going to work anymore. And as I said, I think the seeds of the Great Resignation were planted long before the pandemic. The pandemic created an environment where people had the opportunity to reconsider what the heck was going on and what does it mean for them. And they're voting with their feet.
We are pleased to welcome Adamo Education as a proud sponsor of Global TV Talk Show.
The concept of a microschool is the reimagining of the one-room schoolhouse. My name is Tamara Becker. I'm the president and CEO of Adamo Education. The microschool concept really does not just lend itself to the personalization and the customization of learning, but also the social development and fostering that sense of love for learning. Unlike what we see in traditional brick and mortar schools, we have multiple grade levels in the same learning space. Students can be enriched by the socialization that they get, as well as the academic support from peers. What differentiates Adamo is the fact that we are taking the best pieces of brick and mortar, of digital, and then at-home learning. Students here can come 5 days a week. They can come 4 hours a day. It will really just depend on what is best for the student and for the parent. To enroll, just reach out via phone, text, or email, and we'll have that personalized conversation, and we'll be able to get you all set. Check us out at adamoeducation.org.
Become a global player in your field.
Cross Culture to Go provides virtual support for your global business and career success.
We can help you thrive in 140 plus countries and markets.
On the web at crossculturetogo.com.
So we don't have much time by design here, but what about office politics in a remote environment? That's a big one.
That's a whole show, guys.
I know. We'll do that another time.
Well, but to answer the question directly, and you've heard me say this before, one of the biggest things I worry about for my clients and for industry generally is all these people who have been hired that have never seen the inside of the office, have never met their manager face to face and had a chance to shake their hands. And unless you're a manager who has the emotional intelligence and the maturity to acculturize someone in the new company and to shepherd their success in a remote environment, the clock is ticking on more resignations.
Big time. And maybe at the management level.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
So
lots to talk about there.
Part of the conversations are they managing things or managing people?
Well, that's the problem, isn't it?
Right.
You know, you manage work, you manage process, you lead people. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, by becoming a coach, learning how to become a coach.
Well, I think that every manager has a coaching dimension in their responsibilities. Now, whether they exercise that responsibility is another matter. And that's where, you know, people like me and others try to make a few shekels. But the reality is that most managers aren't good people leaders. And the pandemic and the environment the pandemic has created, more importantly, because that's the legacy we're going to live with, is the environment that it's created. It represents opportunities for businesses to do better. And hopefully businesses will recognize that this is genuinely an opportunity to rethink how do we get stuff done through our people. And again, referring to our mutual friend, Stephen, how to create a more humane working environment. And I'm going to send Stephen a bill for the endorsement.
Talking with Ken Somers and Somers HR Solutions. Yeah. And look for Ken on LinkedIn. And thank you for being my guest on Global
Thank you
TV.
for having me, Ed. Always a pleasure.
So let's set a date for another one.
You got it. You got it.
Thank you. It's Ken in Groton, Connecticut. But spring is coming, right?
Absolutely.
And
the bulbs are blossoming.
San Diego. We're going to go out in a few minutes and got to put on the sunblock.
There you go.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Ed.
you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.